All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen. I really enjoyed your presentations. It's great to get those insights. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to day two here in beautiful Montreal. My name is Mike Francis. I'm the product manager of silviculture and harvesting solutions with Remsoft. And I'm also a part-time member of the Scope Creep band that performed last night. Scope Creep. So I hope everyone's having fun, and I had a good time last night. So this should be easy after that, right? Okay, so let's dig in here. So yesterday, I love the presentations yesterday because I was like, oh, that calls back to something I'm talking about. But first thing I wanted to point out was operational planning is complex, and it's only becoming ever more complex. And our role in product is to hear what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis and apply a little bit of jujitsu. I have a 10-year-old who is still trying to foot sweep me every day. He has yet to succeed, but we're trying to hear what you're experiencing, translate them into enhancements in the product that'll let your teams have more realistic harvest and delivery schedules at their fingertips that they can rely on and they can move forward confidently, to be aggressive and achieve success. So my goal today is to walk you through what we've recently delivered for the product and then what we're envisioning moving forward with the product towards in the horizon. And it's not going to be through the lens of like isolated feature, like ad hoc features. What I really want to focus on, and hopefully you'll walk away with our time together, is that with the product team, we're trying our best to think about releases as, value within every release, but more the chessboard. There is a strategy in play, and they're building momentum, progressing towards something bigger, and delivering bigger capabilities as a holistic kind of impact. So I guess I already kind of introduced myself. But I will give you a little bit more insight into who I am and how I work with my team. I've been with the Remsoft team for 6 years. I started as a product analyst working on Remsoft Operations specifically. Now I'm the product manager of silviculture and harvesting solutions, and I work heavily with Remsoft Operations, as you can well imagine. Let's take a look at the session map because I kind of got ahead of my slides. Here we go. But I want to show you kind of 3 slides here that will speak to a continued evolution for the product over 3 chapters of our time together. So we'll kick off today with foundations, and these are core upgrades to the infrastructure of Remsoft Operations upon everything else is going to rely on. And what I really want you to focus on in that subsection is it talks to our product approach where we love to have a lot of engagement, a lot of discovery, and as a lot of folks know that we really value your time and get your ear and hear exactly what you're experiencing and translate those into really value-driven proposals for the product to continue to evolve. And here we're going to be looking at improving the schedule realism through system shutdown calendar enhancements. We took our transportation module and we heard the need from folks that outsource their transportation needs, but they still wanted finer levels of granularity. So we reimagined how the transportation module could work in a basic transportation mode, we call it. And then finally, the third section in foundations, we're going to talk about the maturity of the product. So Remsoft Operations has been around for a bit, and folks now that have been using the product for quite some time, we needed to think about data governance long-term. How do you want to manage archiving needs for harvest units that have been complete for quite some time, but you still want to have access to the historical data when it's necessary for retrospective analysis, or the operational horizon. You cut these blocks 7 years ago, now you're moving next door and you want to work there and you want to double check where you're going to be going and compare those plan versus actuals. That'll all be there in that archiving set. Second, shifting over to the center, we're going to be talking about what I call the 5-part strategic set. And this is where we're getting into that value within every release. And we'll look at a series of staircases of release after release of functionality that all build towards greater crew productivity precision, where we're going to get the entire supply chain benefiting exponentially with more realistic harvest and delivery schedules by giving you more accuracy at the top of the chain. And then finally, we'll look into 3 areas of active discovery together, where give you some preview behind the lens of areas where we're going to be going next in the coming releases. As a side note, anything that is future forward facing, whatever, but anything that we're looking at in the horizon, you'll be seeing some mock-ups and they're subject to change. Q&A isn't up here, but I'm long-winded on a good day. My apologies in advance. You're already seeing them, but I'll make sure to reserve some time because I'd love to hear from lots of you about what you're maybe excited that we walk through together, and maybe it might inspire some thoughts about we can collaborate around where we see it going next. So digging into foundations first, so we thought we'd start here because these are those core skeleton upgrades that all the data on top will, be underpinned by. And this subset of functionality, when I watched Parag's walkthrough yesterday, he spoke about being deliberate and cautious about, not moving too forward, but being iterative and continuing to build, scalable, well-tested solutions. That's what these three underpinned kind of solutions are, to make sure that folks are able to continue moving forward with trustworthy schedules, but so we never are going to go into a fishtail, but we continue to build that strong foundation. So here, again, we're talking about listening to customers through that discovery ecosystem, reaching out, validating our assumptions, hearing those constraints that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis and translating them into these features. So the first one was the shutdown calendar revamp, and we'll dig in to see how destinations and Remsoft Operations, all the way down on the end of the river, I guess, are able to achieve greater levels of realism through enforcing both operational and delivery constraints within each in particular mill and yard in Remsoft Operations. Then we're going to be looking to that basic transportation mode I mentioned, where folks wanted greater levels of realism, but didn't need to go to the finer levels of the powerful level of the full detailed set of the transportation module, which is incredibly beneficial for teams that manage their own fleets. But for folks that just wanted to shake hands, get outsourced agreements, but want to still have the power of a Gantt-based experience to quickly build out and represent that outsourced plan. We'll show you what that looks like. And then the archiving feature, which is currently in progress. So that soft retirement mechanism to, really speaking to the maturity of the product as we move forward. So getting into the shutdown calendar revamp, this was a big undertaking. Our team dug in and were able to deliver on this one. And essentially, we've done a good job over the years of providing planners with lots of different capabilities to apply those constraints, whether upriver with scheduled shutdown calendars that seamlessly work in the background as you're dragging and dropping your crew assignments, all the way to roadside volume delays that you can apply, and even down to the individual destinations you've allocated all that wood flow to. We did have the ability to shut them down in the calendar, but it was the entire destination. So there was a bit of an Achilles heel there, and that had to be addressed. So we needed to get in there, get the team together and figure it out. So what we did is we dug in and we revamped the entire system model that, of course, underpins everything, which was no small feat. My poor QA team, but they got it done. So we were able to introduce calendar entry types that were operational or delivery types of shutdowns by destination to achieve greater delivery schedules and essentially prevent wood flow managers from hopefully doing as many backflips or ending up with a hairstyle like mine, I guess. So digging into an in particular mill here in Remsoft Operations, we can see how we went about delivering this in the user interface. So by opening up a local shutdown, you now see the opportunity for folks to say, well, this is going to be an operational shutdown, or actually we're going to be still running the mill, but we're going to be shutting down the loading bay because, and this speaks to Ray's presentation, where if your destinations are approaching that maximum capacity, you need to be able to at times say, look, we're planning to be going to 103% here, or I think he even mentioned like even past that, where it's starting to burst at the seams. Now, by introducing delivery shutdowns at the mill-by-mill level, folks are able to more accurately represent and model those actual constraints that they're experiencing on a day-by-day basis, and at the end of the day, getting exponential benefits, and hopefully, not being forced to go into panic mode when they can see things coming quite a ways down the line. So here we created a quick delivery shutdown entry for this particular mill, and it says everybody's at GFC. The loading bays aren't going to have, they're all at the Habs game. So now the system is going to say on the 24th to the 26th, they're all zeros for any wood flow product volumes that are going to be coming there, and they'd be delayed to start coming in again on the 27th. Or even for fleet management up at that more finer level with a transportation module, you assign your fleets and they will again take those zero, just like a crew would if you gave them a shutdown entry. So all this came together very well, and we've had good feedback on that thus far. So thinking about that transportation module, I just kind of got a lucky segue there, but this spoke to that common operating model that we're hearing from folks saying, we want greater levels of realism to represent our outsourced hauling management, but we don't necessarily need to do the management on the level of the outsourced client, where they are concerned about numbers of machines that are trucks that are going to be delivering, or what are the cycle times involved. They just want to know what have I actually got for folks that they're planning to deliver my product, where they're allocated or elsewhere. And then maybe there's some gaps there that I could reach out and say, hey, based upon my assumptions, you guys might still have the ability to help me out here. So what we did is, instead of introducing friction by forcing folks with the power of the entire detailed version, we came up with a sibling here with the basic transportation mode. And folks have given really good feedback where they said, now we can come in, we can quickly build out our haulage capacity that we have agreed to with our outsourced clients, and we can see the benefits in Power BI or the embedded reporting capabilities in Remsoft Operations. And then as the conditions change, I have this very nice user interface, very slick and easy to work with the Gantt, and quickly say, oh, well, now this one's going here, and I'm going to shift this one up there. Very, very well executed, and it came together really well. So here, what you see is how we came together in the actual user interface. We weren't forced, and this is where, as a product person, and my friend Andrew's here, so I give you credit. He was in the tent to help us come up with an elegant solution. So we weren't forced to come up with a pair version of the transportation module and the Apple. We were able to have them move forward in parallel. So any of the attributes that I mentioned that would just cause friction for folks to say, well, now I have to manage all the numbers of trucks for my outsourced client. Now they're all set to sort of like a null state by giving them a value of 1 and setting them to be read only. So we can now move forward from the products team perspective. I can now push forward confidently to develop at a higher level enhancements for the entire transportation module without having to, reinvent the wheel and think, oh, how does that work with that other pear-shaped version? They both move forward in unison and provide a lot of value to our clients already. We've seen a lot of really good feedback. So then we're going to move into the final section of foundations around unit archiving, and that's that data governance enhancement where it's currently in progress. And here, again, the goal is to provide access to the great value that we hear that folks have with the comparison of plan versus actual data that's, only continues to grow as folks have invested year after year of all of that historical data in the system. You want the means to still have access to that. Oh my gosh, I'm waving my hands around. To still have access to all that data for Power BI reports, to train the AI capabilities in Remsoft Operations, which come see me after, we'll talk about those, but to do crew productivity predictions, for instance, by having access to year after year after year of how these particular crews have done on all these different units, it only exponentially, again, provides greater value. So what we did is we dug in and we said, okay, so what do we have? We right now in the system, we have the means for planners to look at the operational horizon and then toggle on and off the visibility of units, which is very powerful for fine-tuning towards that annual plan for what you're trying to achieve as an organization. But once crews have been assigned and actuals start flowing in, you can't start toggling off the visibility. Now they're invisible, they're visible. That just didn't work, so we had to kind of think of something in the Venn diagram, but something new. So that's where this archive toggle comes in. So the folks with the right credentials could come into a unit, and then you'll see that visible toggle I just mentioned, very powerful in its own right. But now you have an archive toggle. You can come into the unit level and say, it's been 7 years, this unit's been complete. Whatever your business rule is for your organization, how you want to leverage this, we're going to ice it off, whatever, maybe you want to call it that. And then you can even scale that functionality where you can now zoom out to this master units list page for the entire geo area in Remsoft Operations. And the admin can go in and manage it just like they could that visible toggle and say you could go down and inline edit those units based upon your subject matter expertise, or you could set a few filters and say, I want everything from 2020. I want to select them all and then batch, set them all to archive. They're all going to be tucked away and partitioned, and all that historical data is going to be preserved. And the key here is that its operational workflows are cleaned up. We envision system performance enhancements because the system isn't going to load those units At the top, you'll see a View Archive Unit checkbox. That'll be preserved between your sessions. So if that's set to be false or off, folks will load up their pages and they're going to load quicker because you're not loading a bunch of units from 6 years ago or 7 years ago. You're now just focused on that operational horizon of the next 6 months, 18 months, or whatever you're looking at. So it's coming together really well, and you're not going to lose access to the data as you need it to get that retrospective analysis. So that's step one. So now we're moving into the middle section here. So we've got that core foundation. So here, this is that idea where we're talking about a staircase of feature enhancements that deliver a greater capability. And we're talking about the crew productivity model enhancement set, basically in totality. So starting here at step one, I guess, we look at these 5 steps. I'd like to give you kind of a broader stroke. They can be kind of fall into 3 chapters. The first one, we talked about the need for connecting a sync between the default crew productivity rates that are preserved in the system, and specifically we talk about the seasonal rates that were introduced, and they were shifting, and folks said, this is where we were hearing feedback, and we said we needed to stabilize that and enable the means to say, I want to remember, don't constantly get the big flash of light and forget what my default rate is as I'm operationally shifting and pivoting. We'll take a look at how we stabilize that. Section 2 and 3 are kind of one together, where we realized that we needed to improve the way FMS inventories were being supported in the system, and whether that was not just relying for the value to be loaded up based upon an old strategic year that might have come over from your system of record. You probably wanted that to be driven by your most recent optimization results, which are preserved as annual plan data. So we'll take a look at how that works. But on top of that, we realized, thinking about high rotation forestry and intensive forestry and plantation environments, we knew that that needed to be supported down to a finer level of granularity, because it was just too coarse at an annual level in the dynamics of the type of game. So now we supported that at a monthly level. The last 2 is where we get into some ideas around enhancing the concept of crew productivity and getting deeper and sort of getting more along the lines of the transportation module, where you have numbers of machines and cycle times. In this case, we'll look at a number of machines by their daily hour availability down to a productivity by hour, not just solely at a daily rate. So this first one out of the first stairs, this is that maintain default productivity. And I guess the prologue or the preface to this one was we introduced the means for crews to be maintained at a seasonal crew productivity default rate. So when my team goes out in a frozen season, they have a productivity rate of 100. Or when they go out in a different season, maybe it's 20% less or 20% more. And based upon the start date of where that planner is dropping and manipulating the crew assignments, we realized the feedback. People said, this is great, but we need you to go deeper. We needed to remember, as we're shuffling around and we're adjusting and pivoting and responding to forest fires or whatever we need to do operationally, I want the assignments to keep remembering what season they belong in, because as you know, things can change rapidly in the operational space. So that's where we dug in and we applied a solution. So here you see cascading from left to right. We have a harvest season of frozen for a particular crew of 100 cubic meters per day. And then an interesting part that I want to point out is another feature that was rolled out was this unit crew productivity modifier. So this is a series of enumerated different classifications that can be very complicated or very streamlined. In this case, you just see one harvest and forwarding productivity rate of good, which applies any assignment going through that funnel, a effective modifier of 1.2. But that can be a very elaborate daisy chain of different attributes that are all multiplied by one another to add up to one effective modifier. So you start with that default rate, it goes through this kind of gauntlet and then comes out as 120. Now with that check mark added, the system knows, okay, you want me to keep remembering that. So as things get shuffled, this might fall into a different season, but it's always going to go through that productivity modifier, which can be exponentially beneficial. And that talks about step 1 of this whole productivity pipeline that we're going to dig a little deeper into. So with the FMS Use Annual Plan feature, which was recently delivered, steps 2 and 3 were delivered in formation. Now planners have agency to go in before any crews are assigned to say, I want you to use the actual annual plan attributes so that I can fine tune the FMS inventory volumes well in advance maybe of the most recent field estimates that are being acquired, to say, I want to make sure I have the most accurate preview of my FMS inventory that aligns with our operational planning horizon. So by adding this means a checkbox within every unit, and that's again available to be done in batch at a higher level, these users are able to come in and get an advanced setup to fine tune from maybe a strategic year that was coming over from a system of record. In this case, you can see annual plan attributes of September in 2026. And by having this check mark on, now the product volumes tab for the unit is going to be looking up an assigned year off of that attribute because that's true. And essentially, you'll see the little tooltip. It says, this is going to be based off of the earliest crew assignment. Then it's going to use this value if you've activated it, or as a contingency, it's always going to use that strategic year. All this adds up to greater accuracy and better decision making at the end of the day. So again, now we're moving to step 3, and this was again just recently rolled out. And now we've added, this is a configuration, and we're doing our best not to introduce too many configurations because it gets a little bit exponentially challenging from a delivery standpoint. But we needed to do this one at an opt-in basis because the folks that in the exciting South American environment and other plantation environments across the world, we heard that we needed finer levels of granularity to support their needs. So that's where we added this configuration. And if you pop a little peek behind the veil here, the upper left-hand corner, it would be areas where my friend Andrew or some of our team would come in and set up our clients when they're being onboarded to say, oh, they want to work with the transportation mode, or they want to work with a monthly level of FMS product volumes. So by activating that, now that assigned year attribute dynamically is going to change to assigned date. And it's going to be driven maybe by that check mark being true on that previous feature by the annual plan January in 2026. Now, if you schedule it in March, I would update to be March of 2026, and the volumes will be loaded up from the database accordingly. Either way, it's pushing everything towards that North Star for Remsoft Operations, which is providing you and folks like yourselves with more access to realistic harvest and delivery schedules. Getting into the end section of this 5-part section, now we're talking about advanced crew productivity. Now, productivity works at a daily rate in the past for Remsoft Operations, but we envision a deeper opportunity to enhance the accuracy here. So we wanted to do it, and again, anytime we can without introducing more configurations, more of those kind of elegant solutions where we can just use sort of a null approach and from a product perspective, evolve the system more streamlined. We want to do that. And that's how we're moving forward with our vision for this. Again, this is something in the horizon, but certainly the wheels are moving, and we've begun working in the background on this. So what we're planning on doing is adding an advanced crew productivity section to the default values. And those 3 attributes I mentioned earlier of number of machines, daily hours, and a productivity by hour for your unit measure are all multiplied together to add up to that daily rate, which was the original kind of MVP approach for productivity, or minimum viable product, I guess, for how we envision productivity in the system. But by coming down to this level of granularity and supporting it with those, rolling it out with ones for all of our folks that do want to work at that daily rate, we're non-destructively introducing exciting new opportunities for greater levels of accuracy with crew productivity rates. And even, it's not as an organization level being rolled out. You could say, well, this crew is massive. They're my big team. I want to dig in and use this functionality for them. So go ahead and use that. For the other ones, you can continue to leave them set to be 1, and then have your productivity per hour equal that daily rate. So you can choose on a crew by crew basis where you want to apply that level of granularity and see the benefits. And then this is going to be rolled out, of course, into the assignment level as well. Here, this mock-up shows it at the daily level where the folks haven't chosen to override them to say, I want 5 machines working 8 hours a day at 20 cubic meters per hour or whatever it would be. But the user could come in with these default rates loaded up and choose on an assignment level to, I actually want to get down to the assignment level and override these values and fine-tune things. And on top of it, we envision our variable production rates, which if folks have worked with the system, are incredibly powerful in their own right. But we see this providing great value. Now you can come in and actually assign a variable production rate to say, well, for the end week of the assignment, I want to roll down my machines to half the number and half the number of hours, or however your business works about finishing up or ramping up a crew assignment. This will be very beneficial. And AI productivity, again, predictions are going to be really beneficial on there as well. So rolling into the final step of this productivity pipeline, this is another one of those scenarios where we heard a lot of feedback about an existing piece of functionality that needed to be enhanced. So we have currently piece size overrides that are broad overrides that can be applied. So if any unit falls between X and Y of a particular piece size attribute, then I want you to override their crew productivity rate to be X. Folks said, that's great, but we need finer level of control. This really needs to be at the crew level. So what we're doing is doing just that. So we're going to dig in and take it from being tucked away in its own little dialogue, give it the screen real estate it deserves. Now you'll see, for folks familiar with the system, what would typically be called the productivity table tab on the right. That'll just be crew productivity. And now you're dropping down into its own productivity override table, where you're going to see us starting with piece size overrides, but certainly on the roadmap is to enhance this to allow folks to leverage other drivers like basal area or stem density or however you want to get the most benefit out of this. So on a crew by crew basis, you can create these overrides. It's at that hourly level to work in concert with that feature we just looked at and still roll up to that daily level where needed, and then deliver at the end of the day, huge pipeline of accuracy upstream for productivity. So I'm behind time, I gotta pick it up. We're looking at what's next for the product. So what we're gonna look at is 3 features individually on their own that are gonna deliver great value, but when you think of them in totality, they're gonna be positioning the product for big planning and decision support capabilities. Starting on the left here, we're going to be looking at batch crew assignments. And if anyone's used our fleet batch capabilities with our transportation mode, internally, it's one of our favorite, it's one of the coolest kind of designed. One of our top developers did a wonderful job of executing there. So what you can do there is you can queue up a bunch of unassigned roadside product volumes, say batch, and then choose a vendor in a fleet, and then hit calculate. And it enters you into this sort of what if scenario. And then you can inline edit before you commit to the live schedule. You could shuffle their order, you can fine tune things. We see the same thing coming around for parity in crew scheduling, and it's going to be incredibly beneficial. Step 2 is scenario analysis, allocation. We have the ability to support various scenarios for harvest scheduling, and we want folks in Woodflow to be able to come in and be able to create these scenarios and non-destructively, again, the what if scenario out, whatever you're experiencing, and then take action where you see the correct path forward. Finally, we'll finish up looking at data insights, AI assistant. And this is where this speaks to, again, a big theme from yesterday. We'll start off with an embedded module where your entire team can have quick access to surface any risks or anomalies in the system across the entire wealth of data in Remsoft Operations in a natural language approach, but evolve that to an agentic kind of solution in time. So I'll show you quickly because I think I just kind of went pretty deep into the intro slide. But let's take a look at how batch crew assignments could look. This is that mock-up version of what I was kind of explaining to you. So folks working in Remsoft Operations, we envision that little pencil with the teal blocks. Folks could apply some filters, zero down to the block of harvest units you want to work with, select them all, and then queue up this batch assignment option. Now you can calculate all of these crew assignments that are going to be kind of coming down in their natural waterfall behavior, which you can currently do by selecting crew assignments and effortlessly just dragging and dropping them, and then they'll assign them based off of all their productivity and schedules, etc. But now this is going to empower planners with the means to come in and game out and what if scenarioize. Is that word? Scenarioize? Maybe. It can game out and figure out exactly how they want to tackle this before they interject all this into their live schedule. And then we see a data cycle there, eventually maybe editing units, bring them back into this state and wash and repeat. It's going to be incredibly powerful. I'm really excited about this one. So scenario analysis, like I mentioned, Currently, when you make changes to your wood flow allocation, they're live immediately in the data within Remsoft Operations. And we see the need to come up with the means to support scenario-wise the option here. So what you're seeing here is a very similar approach for a consistent user experience of adding similar UI elements here in the top of undoing, redoing, or opening up an audit trail of all the wood flow changes that have happened for your particular geo area. You can get a sense of who's making these changes. I can create, in this case, a Montreal GFC scenario, and then I know, in this case, okay, do we want to move forward with that one? I can apply that one, or I could have a wealth of them that I'm going to compare and contrast, or throw away a few when they don't meet my needs anymore. Either way, this is going to be incredibly beneficial and lead to really greater outcomes for entire organizations, mitigating risk. Finally, looking at the Data Insights Assistant, here's a little peek. Again, this is a very exciting feature. This one, we have proof of concepts already in play, and we're seeing, as a product person, many times I'm like, I think the Data Assistant we don't need to do that feature anymore because I think this is just going to help us do it for us. Because we're thinking, well, maybe we should make this report or make that. What we're seeing is, if you look in the upper hand corner, a small icon of a light bulb, activate that no matter where you are. You have the context of the problems you're currently experiencing and you're trying to resolve in Remsoft Operations. Now you have your AI assistant pop in. You can maximize that as needed, but you can ask, in a language kind of sense, show me all the harvest units that are set to not ready. Or what crew assignments are meeting or 20% over their variance. Or show me destinations. What destinations are scheduled to be under a minimum or over a maximum based upon their inventory forecast. All that's available at your fingertips, and it's going to provide incredible value, and really excited for that. And we're going to be, and Parag and several folks spoke to this. This is a little preview of how we envision the broader forest intelligence platform benefiting from this type of functionality as well. So I'm a couple minutes over. That's pretty good. But thank you for your time. We took a look at all those foundational underpinnings that are going to allow Remsoft Operations to continue to grow and scale carefully over time and continue to deliver. We took a look at that 5-part strategic set, and that kind of speaks to our product kind of motto that Grant walked through with you yesterday, with that value within every release and continuing to evolve our solutions with carefully considered maneuvers. And then we took a look at what's next and on the horizon. So we do have some time. If there's any questions from anyone, happy to talk over.
To be clear, the AI assistant in your example of showing the tracks that are not set to ready is actually going to do that for you, or give you the recipe of how you can do it?
Oh yeah, no, and that's a great question. What we're seeing, at least right now, and when we're going to continue to evolve the solution, but when you ask that particular question, it's going to provide you, depending upon the context of your questions, you could ask it to provide me with a table output of this, or I want to see a graph even, so we see a lot of potential there. But yeah, if you ask that question in particular, it's going to provide you sure, here's a list of your units that aren't meeting their objectives. It will be interactive to a certain degree, but what it does is it goes through the entire database, and it based upon, there's some questions that the model is trained out of the gate, sort of a template of questions, or it also has the means dynamically, which is pretty amazing, to even, you can go outside the box and ask it, very, kind of outlier questions, and it's equipped to handle those as well. Either way, it's going to provide you in that context to say, here are the units that you should take a look at, and likely would be in a hyperlink state where you could just click on them, and then that's going to stay there persistent for you, so you can just take action and be like, what units haven't I allocated? Here they are, and then you can just go ahead and just allocate them. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I apologize. We had an ill-timed fire engine. So you're talking about, you're going down to a smaller, the net area is like 40 hectares and then continue, sorry.
Yeah, so the question
thank
is about how this operational interface and the whole software would fare against annual plan of, let's say, 3,000 harvest areas, 3,000 harvest units.
Oh, sure.
So how operable is it? How automated is it? I guess this allocation and all of this is a future function. It's at the moment it's more or less manual input.
Great question.
Yeah. So
yeah,
if it makes sense, my question, because
I totally,
it's
totally
hard to
get where you're coming
formulate.
from. Yeah, so we'll unpack that a little bit. So stepping back to the first point about how can it handle, 3,000 smaller, 20, 30, 40 hectare units. We've pushed the limit on the system a bit and seen that it can handle quite well with quite a few harvest units. That might be something that we'll have to, off board and double check to see the performance. But yeah, I feel confident that we can meet the needs of your organization and what you're looking to achieve operationally. As far as allocation planning goes, certainly there are tools in the system. There's one master page that I showed where we're thinking about putting the scenario analysis options, which is it has batch capabilities there. But of course, you could be bringing in optimized allocation plans via API. We have a robust API system that could be driven off of optimization. So you could start with that as your level set and then fine tune that as needed on a unit by unit basis, or via that batch with applying some filters and fine tuning it as needed. But certainly, yeah, there's a whole module of crew scheduling to allocation, all the way down to destination, which is very powerful in its own right, with a lot of functionality there as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Here, yeah.
I have two questions, but the simple question is, yesterday we heard about the data logger and what is the feedback loop from the actual into your table? So you showed us a lot of even numbers, 120 productivity per day, and that's obviously not the experience of that crew for the last units or so. So what's the feedback loop that you update the productivity in your table? Is it coming from the ERP? Is it coming from the data loggers? Where is it coming from?
That's a great question. So as far as plan versus actual capabilities, we have a robust API that does support the input of actual values against harvest, forwarding, delivery, or even fleet actuals, we call them if you work in the transportation module. Those values could certainly be driven from Logger, or they could be driven by other docket systems. And when you do add those, you have the powerful historical comparison of, we had planned to deliver X on date Y, and then it shows that we delivered 10% less. And now you have the opportunity to take action to follow up on that and understand that you're now at a deficit state for meeting objectives for wood flow. Does that speak to answering where yeah. Yeah, no, there is a robust API in the background that typically, with a powerful FME workbench that our team helps organizations feed in data from whatever source that you consider your actuals. And hopefully it's from Logger, yeah, it's very flexible that way. I believe you had a question.
I'm outside the forestry sector, but I presume at high level you try to capture in your system everything that forest timber companies, the timber companies have in terms of data, right? You don't want them to, if there's things that they are doing on their side alone, that's going to be an interest to actually include that in your system, right? So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, because I'm coming from wildfire intelligence, and all these forest companies deal in one way or another with the data of where fires are or how they're going to be taken care of. So is there anything in the system that how would you put that information in, or is there already something?
In particular, nothing like isolated to a shutdown that would for a crew assignment that would equal specifically a wildfire, but I mean, certainly you can go into any of your operational harvest units and set them into a status where, you know, they're just shut down for the time being. So then that preserves, essentially it says you've completed 51% of the block of the actuals, the harvest actuals, and then it just takes that 49% of the harvest unit, and now it's tucked away for future consideration. And it's in a shutdown state. And so it's an
Okay.
operations mode. Yeah, but you inspired actually to remember, I should mention on the horizon as well, I kind of rushed my finale, but we do certainly have plans for silviculture as part of the holistic growth of the product, and road management as well. We see that being also included in, especially with our team, our portfolio continuing to grow to support those spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question.
And maybe continuing there, just thinking about, I'm by no means an expert, but if you want to do some work to prevent fires from spreading, then of course I would imagine you would use that module to schedule the work and to plan it and to execute.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And we have had actually discussions with various teams, third parties about the opportunity with, you know, the increasing risk of wildfire to, you know, use whatever tools at our disposal. AI, obviously, predictive analysis makes sense to leverage that tool. With the, and again, that speaks back to the data governance enhancement around unit analysis or archiving, where you can preserve year after year. You're going to only exponentially get a better understanding of being able to predict the future in concert with the prescriptive analysis of optimization. That data cycle is incredibly powerful. So you could say, you know, typically in this season, and this block has been prone to wildfire, and, you know, and you can even see Power BI reports that drive those predictions. And yeah, we see great value there for sure moving forward. And it likely, you know, it could evolve into its own feature set in time. Certainly we have a full bucket at the moment, but it's an important space that deserves attention, 100%.
So the Stratus in-floor and operations presentations show an overlap of the systems because they develop separately. So where do you go with integrate them? Because it's bending my mind a little bit to how do you want to mix this one?
Yeah, that's where my director, the VP of product is with us, and that, I think that's what keeps him probably up at night, but he's that's what he's tackling. And with our team, our entire product team's coming together to talk about integrating the entire product portfolio. Certainly, like I mentioned, Remsoft Operations entered into this discussion with a wealth of API endpoints, and we did our best to position the product to be ready to integrate with various sources. And the Forest Intelligence demo yesterday does show that we have a solution in place that's only continuing to becoming more rock solid, and we see deeper integration opportunities between each product. Speaking about areas, there's none of the products are like, we're not sunsetting this or sunsetting that with the current view of how we're moving forward. It's all about an entire Venn diagram of anywhere there's overlap. That only strengthens the power of the solution that we have at our fingertips, and we're going to be coming up with means of moving forward. We have a very strong strategic vision for how this is going to move forward.
But for a user, that would increase the complexity to deal with this overlap.
Well, I mean, as we move forward into those spaces, for clients that have overlaps, we're certainly ready to help with integration and support along the way. We have a wonderful support team that's ready to help integrate all of our solutions and a vision for how to drive value within each of them non-destructively to make sure that everyone's moving forward with solutions that drive value. And we have a clear vision of the evolution of the total product for sure. So come back next year and we'll talk about the solution, and hopefully you'll be excited with where we're going. I've been told my time is up. Do you want to maybe meet up with this one after, or are you okay with another 5 minutes? Or okay, 1 minute. We got 1 minute.
I did my technical analysis, gathered the supply numbers. I know you guys have an allocation model too.
Yes.
And now you talk about operation. Can you give a little bit of an allocation in between? Take the spatial harvest sequence, allocated into your operation? I know this is good for the operation.
Sure. Yeah. So our allocation planning in Remsoft Operations, it's separate from crew scheduling, and they're not. There's not a requirement of one another. Of course, you can say a harvest unit. I'm planning to send you product A and you product B, and that doesn't. It's really the temporal kind of component of the crew assignment. So once we said I'm sending you A and B, I drop in my crew on March 24th. Then the system says, okay, we're starting to harvest and we're starting to roadside product volumes. If we're hot logging, you guys are going to start seeing them on the 25th, and the system will take it from there. If it's the transportation mode, you'll see that as unassigned roadside product volume as of the 25th, and you can say, I want your fleet to come grab this and drive it here, and you're going to be taking it over here, kind of thing. So that from the system's perspective, it's the allocation plan, largely driven by optimization in many cases, and then fine-tuned as needed operationally, is its own kind of beast. They do overlap in the center of the overlapping Venn diagram. Yeah. Thank you all. That was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience. No worries.
Just clarifying, so we're on break now until 10:30, but after the break, we'll have Maria Filion in here discussing Woodstock, and then Jason will be back in the big room talking about Midway. See everyone at 10:30.